Poor walks. Walk 1, the foundation. When I was younger, my grandfather and I would walk every morning while I was on summer break. I would go bursting out the door since he would never actually stop. He would just keep the same pace and wait for me to catch up. Most of the time the greeting was silent and until after a few steps and I would pose a question about the world and the way things are. He would begin explaining, censoring nothing, and many times he would go into a story about how great or horrible his life was. I learned early on from those walks that life is an ebb and flow. One minute you're on the mountain, and the next you're in the riverbed. After all my inquiries were met, he would begin his showing off. He would walk the concrete rail on the bridge that went over Old Man's Creek, the same creek that I get my name from. All the while singing and dancing like we were the only two people on earth. Grandpa was a special person who lived an exceptional life after spending a fair amount of time on the run from the law. I heard every one of those stories over and over again, and I hung on to every word. Grandpa taught me many things and he gave me many lessons that I still carry to this day, and the biggest of those being to treat all things, alive or not, equal. By approaching every situation with a clear head, you didn't run the risk of, as he would say, going in there half-cocked. When he was nearing his end on this earth, he was my backdoor neighbor. He was my only neighbor. I would help my dad take care of him, and we would go out into the timber still, but by this time he couldn't walk. So Dad carved a path large enough that he could drive his van through the woods. This was our new walk. And we would talk about many things that made us laugh and cry just the same. We found him one time, wedged between two trees in his van, asleep at the wheel, still in drive. He had dozed off while looking at the magnificence of nature. Grandpa could never keep himself out of the timber, even up to the end. He was drawn to them, having grown up in the north, surrounded by pines and maples. He couldn't stay away, even though he had seen it 1,000 times, for he understood nature by seeing it 1,000 times. He instilled this into me, and I spend every chance I get connecting with the land, and I hope to instill the same feeling in others.
They said he's busy, hold the line, please. Call me crazy.
Walk 2. Hip-hop and the high trees. Solomon Furious Worlds is the most amazing name I've ever heard. Saul and I met at the fellowship, and since we've become friends. We connected because I had mentioned that I was a fan of hip-hop. Being very surprised, Saul approached me about coming to the homestead for a walk and talk. After waffles and a pretty deep conversation about religion, I knew that Saul and I would get along. You see, I despise the part of our society that makes some topics off limits. Saul and I went into the woods for a walk, and we talked about nature, religion, politics, race relations, and music. We both shared our viewpoints and listened intently to one another's opinions, and we came away having that little bit better understanding of one another and where we came from, all the while surrounded by trees. Nature has a way of making you feel safe and secure while at the same time free and unencumbered by the social norms that have been instilled in us. Saul grew up in California, and me, I grew up in rural Iowa. He was surrounded by cacti and I was surrounded by trees and corn. However, our lives have been mostly parallel. We went on to share songs with one another, jumping in and changing the track before it was over, just so we could give each other more and more. Our music is our outlet and our voices in many ways. We would not have gone so far down the rabbit hole that day had we not been in the timber. We couldn't have played our tracks so loud, nor used the language that we used if we were in the human apparatus of society. This is what is needed. An outlet of dialogue in a safe place surrounded by friends. Saul realized that day that nature has much to offer if you look at it in a way that allows understanding. Many people, they look at forests and mountains and rivers and lakes and they see beauty, no doubt. But very few look at these things and understand the processes that brought about these wonderful places. Without understanding nature, we do not truly appreciate it. This is the same for our fellow man. If one does not take the time to ascertain a detailed comprehension of any subject, one does a disservice to subject and self. Saul learned that day that trees hold much power, and to call them by name is to recognize their worth. To touch a branch or a leaf and to call it a maple or a birch or an ash or a poplar, this is not personification. This is individualization of all that matters. This is what we need now more than ever. Comprehensive understanding of what is valuable and what is fleeting. Walk 3. Man's plan and nature's reality. When you look up to the very top of the tallest tree that you can find, it seems to look back at you. One doesn't notice this aspect of the interaction right away, but if you look long enough and deep enough, it'll manifest itself. This interaction comes when one stops walking, stops progress, and takes time to look close. Some have had this luxury and take full advantage. Others are not so lucky to have the time nor the ability to juxtapose the inner self with the outer universe in an attempt to understand the metrics of life. This is a fact I came to know when my friends and fellows, Nazira and Shirley, came for a walk with me on a beautiful afternoon not that long ago. I had all sorts of questions to ask that I had planned weeks before. But after the first question, it became clear that this was not going to be a mapped out journey. I realize now that this moment was organic for a purpose. We were building relationships for a future journey yet defined. Nothing went as planned that day. The dogs refused to behave, running around, barking like idiots. Yet even this insubordination became something magical as the dogs left the path towards a foreign smell. While the duo sniffed and searched on one side of the massive maple root ball, out the other side came a slinking, all-tailed, long-legged coyote. The wild Canis moved with a deliberate nature that was foreign to us watching as well as his still sniffing cousins. The gentle killer looked at the three of us, looked at the dogs, and slipped away into the timber, as cool as the other side of the pillow. Shirley and Nazira were thinking that this was awesome, while I was thinking this could turn disastrous if the dogs see what we saw. We kept down the path, determined to make it to the end, or the beginning, depending on what you looked at. Nazira, herself a Mexican immigrant, shared stories she had heard about people walking through the desert to get to safety, and the respect that they found because of extreme exposure to her. This is a gained respect out of fear of being consumed by the heat, as well as being shielded from it by a tree on an oppressive day. Nature giveth and taketh just the same. Nature's give and take is all around. My dad was diagnosed with diabetes and he almost succumbed to it. The answer came in taking a page from Grandpa and walking. He put his disease in remission because he walked in the woods every day and he began to eat real food rather than packaging. In Japan, doctors prescribe a walk in the woods for anxiety and depression and other things. Much of the pharmaceuticals that we depend on today are derived from the rainforest. The same rainforest that we are currently destroying to grow more row crop, for more beef, for more sickness, that we won't be able to cure because there won't be any more rainforest. Man makes many plans, and nature tells man what she is willing to give without repercussion if man would just listen. Walk 4. Taking a step inward. My 30-some walks around the sun have been filled with turmoil, love, fear, and complacency. Currently, I move in a pronounced direction on my walk with vigor and ferocity. Many walk aimlessly around the globe. Most have no time, they say, to spend contemplating life's mysteries and wonders. I have to get to work, I have to take my kids to soccer, I have to buy a new pillow, I have to go on vacation, and I only have an hour to do it again. This is a great mistake. How can we talk about climate change and climate justice if we can't even talk about where we're walking? We look through the mirror rather than at its reflection, missing ourselves in order to impress others and always falling short. We look to others for answers while others look to us for the same. In the timber, I can refuse to rest until I have cored the apple that is my heart and I have seen the connections that is the dance of life. Some say the walk is hand in hand with God. I say that God is the destination and that nature makes the path. We look at our surroundings and we find worth in our imaginary things like money and walls of brick and wood, forgetting that all of those things come from the earth and they serve no purpose to the true 99% on this planet. We disrespect our real neighbors intentionally in the face of our imaginary construct called society. Leopold said that harmony with the land is like harmony with a friend. You can't cherish his right hand and simultaneously cut off his left. Food, shelter, water, love, trees, dirt. This is the hard bottom that is reality. Yet we disrespect them at every turn, disregarding them as waste. Waste. There is no such thing as waste. This is another imaginary construct that only a human could understand. Waste does not exist in the whole of the universe. This is the law of thermodynamics, where there is no free lunch and there is no seconds, where energy is neither created nor destroyed and merely moves from a more ordered state to a less ordered state and back again. Burning a tree, the smoke going into the atmosphere and the soot going into the ground, only to feed another tree carbon dioxide and trace minerals. None is wasted, none disappears into thin air, none is gone forever. The next tree uses energy from the sun to break apart carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen-based molecules and assembles them into new molecules, creating leaves or bark or root or fruit. By walking with clear eyes and a willing brain, we gain an understanding of the universe in which we live in. We can distill life into a movement of energy and nothing more. This seems to some a way of cheapening life. Yet, when we understand our place in the order of things, we do not hesitate to make the right choice, for there is no choice. Abiding by the laws of nature is not something we can circumvent. We can only attempt to maneuver between the lines. We do not escape nature. We do not escape to her. She is ubiquitous. She will give and she will take just the same, not batting one eyelash in order to keep the progress moving forward. She must be who we learn this from.